make it into an eighth principle later. When we talk about to fill something up, this glass gradually is emptying, but we could gradually fill it till it's to the brim, and it's not filled until it reaches the top. Sometimes people say, yeah, but Messianic prophecies had a double fulfillment, a fulfillment in the first day and then a fulfillment later. I wouldn't call it a double fulfillment because it never got filled. It may have had a twofold application, an application when it was spoken and an ultimate application in the end, but the prophecy is on its way to its destiny. Listen, we see a star shining, but we're actually seeing light that's been traveling for all these light years and however long ago it started and then getting here, depending on arguments of the age of the earth and all this stuff, which we're not getting into here. But it's been traveling for a while before it gets here and we can actually see it. Prophecies are traveling down through history. They may have a certain starting point. For example, in Ezekiel's day, Jeremiah's day, they prophesied about Israel's exile. Ezekiel was in exile himself, and they prophesied about the return from exile back to the land. We're going to open that up more in principle number 8. Did it happen? Did the return from exile happen the way they promised? In part. Some of the Jews came back. The temple was rebuilt, but the things did not happen on the scale they prophesied. Were they false prophets? No. Many biblical prophecies are fulfilled gradually. There was an application in their day. There had to be. Otherwise, the scriptures make no sense. And there is an ongoing application, again, in our own day, as there's a mass return of Jews back to the land in the 20th century, now into the 21st. And will reach its fulfillment with the culmination of these promises. Many biblical prophecies are fulfilled gradually. The same with messianic prophecies. So, for example, Zechariah 9 and 10 speaks of Israel's king coming, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey. And then it says his rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Did he come in the way it was spoken? Yes. Meek and lowly, died, suffered, rejected, etc. Yes. Is he ruling over the entire world actively in terms of everyone acknowledging, following? No. Is it in process? Absolutely. If you ask the simple question, which Jew who has lived to date has the most likely signs of being the one whom the nations will look to and call their king and bow down to? Only one possible answer. Only one possible answer. Okay, number 4. And this one, it was actually a rabbi, a conservative rabbi that I mentioned that befriended me when I first became a believer, that shared this principle with me. The prophets saw the Messiah coming on the immediate horizon of history. The prophets saw the Messiah coming on the immediate horizon of history. Now, I use the illustration in my book about when you stand on two mountain peaks and you look across, and they look very close, but there's actually a massive valley in between. Now, I've actually never stood on top of a mountain peak, maybe some hills, and done that. But that is the perspective. And many have made reference to it. You're on top of something high, and you look out and see something else high. You don't realize how great the distance is between. Even in our own lives as followers of the Lord, God can speak something to our own hearts, and we think it's going to happen now. And sometimes now takes 5 years to unfold. We have certain expectation. The prophets, here's the deal. They see judgment coming to their people. They see destruction coming to their people. They see all of the things that God said would happen of a negative, destructive nature. But now they see a promise. But redemption is going to come. But an answer is going to come. A righteous ruler is going to rise up. And to them, it felt like it was right around the corner. Here, look. Just look at a parallel in church history. Christians, for decades and decades, if not centuries and centuries, have been living with certain expectation of the return of the Lord. And you could make a case that in most generations, believers were living with this sense of expectation. Come on, when I came to the Lord 35 years ago, I heard about people that were like 94. And since they were 16, they were expecting Jesus was coming in their lifetime, and it's got to be soon because they're pretty old. The prophets saw the Messiah coming on the immediate horizon of history. That's why some verses that seem to be applying only to past generations, man, that was a prophecy for Isaiah's day. Yeah, he saw Messiah coming on the immediate horizon of history, didn't realize that what he spoke was for hundreds of years down the line. Now, I'll give you an example from the book of Isaiah. Let's turn to the 10th chapter. During Isaiah's day, the great crisis was the Assyrian crisis. The mighty Assyrian nation with their powerful army that wreaked havoc surrounding countries. God used them as a tool of judgment, but because of their arrogance, he was going to cut them down. So, Isaiah, the 10th chapter, deals with Assyria. Verse 5, woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath. And he speaks of how God used Assyria to bring judgment on Samaria, northern Israel, and even to judge his own people in Jerusalem. But no, they were arrogant. Now they're going to destroy Jerusalem and so on. So God's going to cut them down. So here's the picture now. Assyria is pictured as this great, mighty forest that God's going to cut down. Verse 33, see, the Lord Almighty will lop off the boughs with great power. The lofty trees will be felled. The tall ones will be brought low. He will cut down the forest thickets with an axe. Lebanon will fall before the mighty one. And then a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. See, Jerusalem, Judah, they've been decimated too, but something's going to rise up. Well, hang on. This is as if God's going to bring down Assyria, which happened over 2,600 years ago. God's going to bring down Assyria, chop those trees down, and then out of this little stump, the Messiah is going to rise. I don't get it. That didn't happen. No, the prophets saw the Messiah coming on the immediate horizon of history. He doesn't give a time frame, in this year, this date, Messiah will come, and if not, I'm a false prophet. No, the prophecy doesn't work like that for the most part. The way prophecy works is here's a vision, here's a picture, and he's receiving it. He sees the kingdom in his day coming down and the Messianic kingdom rising. So the prophets often saw the Messiah coming on the immediate horizon of history. That's why many of these things are totally intertwined with the situation of the day. And yet, the Messianic hope rises clearly beyond that. Again, the more you've dealt with these issues, the more useful these principles are. Number 5, it's important to read every prophecy in its overall historic context. Wait a second. I thought the New Testament just picks verses out, completely unrelated to context, completely unrelated to historical meaning, takes a verse that had application in Jeremiah's day and pulls it out and now sticks it in Jesus' day. It's like I'm reading Shakespeare and saying, Shakespeare prophesied about this seminar, and Shakespeare didn't prophesy about this seminar. What are you talking about? Shakespeare is writing poetry hundreds of years ago. What are you talking about? I'm telling you, not that Shakespeare prophesied this seminar. I'm telling you that if you want to rightly understand the prophecies, especially as they're quoted in the New Testament, the Messianic writings, the New Covenant writings, if you want to rightly understand them, you've got to look at